Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about how to code API endpoints using Python and Flask framework. So Flask is one of the most popular web frameworks in the Python community and is one of my favorite frameworks to use when it comes to writing API services. It's lightweight, flexible, it gets the job done very quickly. Also, it's very beginner friendly. So, for anyone who is interested in coding their own API services, I highly recommend you to look into Python and Flask. Anyways, let's get started and see how easy it is to spin up a web server and serve our own API endpoints using Flask. So here I am inside of VS Code and open up a new folder. The first thing we're going to do is creating a new virtual environment to install our dependencies for this project. Obviously, we're going to need Flask, and we're also going to be using Flask SQL Alchemy, which is an ORM to interact with the database. And we're going to be using SQLite as the backend data storage for this project. All right, so let's create our virtual environment. So let's type py-mvenv.venv and hit enter. Now it's creating our virtual environment. Wait a couple of seconds. It should be finished right now. All right, so now we need to activate our newly created virtual environment. So we type .venv scripts activate, hit enter. Now we're activating our virtual environment. So from now on, every dependencies that we install is going to be only available to this virtual environment. So now we're ready to install our dependencies. So let's type pip install Flask. All right, let's do pip install Flask SQL Alchemy. All right, so that's all the dependencies that we're going to need for this project. And now we can start writing code for our API service. So let's create a new file called app.py, which is going to be our main entry file for this project. And let's set up the project. So from Flask, import Flask, and then we have app equals Flask name __, and then so let's write a test route to see that, to make sure that everything works so far. So app.routes, let's say info, and then methods equals get. So this is going to be a get request. The route is /info. So def app info, and we're just going to be returning some basic information about our application. So info equals, so name, Flask API tutorial, and then version 0.0.1. All right, and then we can just return info. All right, so now let's run this app and make sure that everything works so far. All right, so let's move on to the terminal, and let me first clear the screen. And then in order to run the app, we can do py-m Flask dash app, and then run debug port equals 5050 and hit enter. All right, so now our service is live on localhost port is 5050. Now, in order to test this, I'm going to be using a VS Code extension called Thunder Client. So you can install this or you can use Postman. Both are okay. So I'm going to be creating a new request, and then the address is, so copy this, and the endpoint is /info, and then let's hit send. Now we can see the response on the right hand side, which is exactly what we wanted. So that means everything works so far. So let's move on. All right, now let's work with some actual data. For this project, I'm going to be creating a user management system. Just include the basic functionalities like creating users, querying users, update and deleting users. All right, so let's create our model class, which is the user class, using SQL Alchemy. So let's switch back to the File Explorer and let's create a new file called models.py. And for this, we're going to be using SQL Alchemy .orm import declarative base and then mapped column. And then we're also going to be using a SQL Alchemy circle import func. All right. Now let's define the class, the base class, which is declarative base. All right, just like that. All right. Now here is our user class. Inherit from base, and let's define the table name, which is just user. All right. And then we're going to be having, for users, we're going to be having ID, mapped column. So it's a integer and it's primary key of the table. All right, so we need to import integer. So from SQL Alchemy import integer and string. Okay. Now for our user, we're gonna be using ID and then username. So mapped column type is string, and then unique, true, must be unique, and then nullable, false, cannot be null. We're also having email, which is basically the same thing as username. So I'm just going to be copying this. And then I also want some timestamps. So created at equals mapped column. This is going to be data time. So let's import that as well. And then we can set a default value, which is func.now. All right. And then we also have updated at is also a mapped column, data time, default is func.now. And we also want it to auto update itself. So on update equals func.now. All right. Now let's define our init function. So def init self. We're just going to need username and email because the rest are automatically inserted by the database. So self.username equals username. Self.email equals email. All right, so that's our data class. Let's go back to our app.py and make sure that we're initializing the Flask app with our database. All right, so let's remove this for now. And then let's add app.config. So let's add the configuration for our SQLite database. So SQL alchemy _ database _ URI equals, so just SQLite tutorial.db. I'm just going to be calling this tutorial.db. And then I also wanted to print out the circle that every time it runs. So it's easier for debugging the application. So app.config SQL alchemy echo equals true. All right, now we need to import the SQL alchemy. So from Flask SQL alchemy import SQL alchemy. All right, and then down here we're going to be creating our database object. So db equals SQL alchemy model class equals base, which we're going to be import from models file, right? So import base. All right, now let's init. So db.init app. Now we need to create our database. So with app.app context, let's do db.createAll. And all right, that's it for now. So let's save it. Now, as you can see, we have an instance folder created, and this is the tutorial DB file. We cannot see this right now, but this is where our data will be saving. All right, now it's time to create the routes to handle incoming requests on our user model. So let's create a new file called routes.py. And then we're going to be import the app. So from app, import app, and also db. And we're also going to be using the model. So from models, import user. And then for Flask, so from Flask, we're going to be using the request object. So import request. So the first route is going to be creating user. So app.route /user, and then methods is post. So post request is usually used for creating records in a database. So the function will be create user, and then let's define the new user. So new user equals new user, and then username is request.json. So this is how you get the request body in your application. So you do request.json and with the attribute name. So email equals request.json email. All right. And then to insert the new user into database, we do db.session.add new user, and then we want to do db.session.commit. All right. Now let's return the new user info to the client side. So response equals so ID is what? So new user dot ID, and then username, new user dot username, email, new user dot email. So created at user dot created at updated at user dot updated at. All right, we can then just return response. Now let's save, and let's move on to the Thunder client. Let's make a post request. So to /user, and we're gonna need to set up the request body. So username test user1, and then email will be test user1 at test.com. All right, let's send. All right, there's something wrong, so let's go back. So we forgot to import the app. So the app doesn't know the routes file existed. So we need to import routes. All right, let's try that again. Let's hit send. So now on the right hand side, as you can see, the response is the new user that we created. ID is 1, created at Wednesday GMT time, updated username test user 1. And down here in the terminal, you can see the actual circle is being run. So insert into user and value and returning stuff and commit and all the SQL Alchemy, the work is doing in the backend. So that means our routes for creating user is working correctly. Now let's create more users. So let's use this client to send more requests to create more users. So test2 send, and then 3. I'm going to be creating a couple more of these. All right, so 4, 5, 6, 7, so now we have 8 users in our database created. Next, let's do the GET request to query all the users. So route, this time is going to be users. Methods is get. All right. Function is called get users. All right. So to get all the users, we can use the select command from SQL Alchemy. So users equals db dot session dot execute. So db dot select user, and we want it to order by created at. So user dot created at, and then so we do scholars. All right, so now for results is a list. So for user in users dot all current user is, so basically an object, a dictionary, I should say. So ID user dot ID username dot username email, and then created at updated at is updated at. And then we need to append the current user to the results list. So results dot append current user. All right. And at the end, we can just return results. All right. Now let's go to our client and test this. So we send a GET request and we get all the users from our database. So let's call send. Now, as you can see, we got a list of users and they're ordered by the created time. So from the first created to the last, which is ID of 8. So now we have all of the 8 users returned. Now I want to take this one step further to include paginations. So if you have like thousands of records, you definitely want some paginations in your endpoints. So to do that, we need basically we need 2 query variables in our routes. So I call it page and per page. So the page is the current page number, and per page is how many items you want for each page. So let's get that from the request URL. So page equals request dot args dot get. So page, the variable name is page, and then type should be integer, and then we have per page equals request dot args dot get. Per page type is also integer. So now users becomes this. So db dot not session dot execute, but db dot paginate. So db dot select user and order by user created at, and then instead of scalars, we need to set the page number. So page equals page and per page equals to per page. All right, so that's how you do paginations. And then down here, we also gonna need the results list, and then for users, not users.all, but instead we need users.items. The rest are the same, and the return value. So I want to do return a dictionary. So page result is the results list, and then we also going to be having a total number, which is the total number of records that we have in the database. So we can do users dot total. All right, let's save this file and go back to the Thunder client. So let's modify our request URL. So we need a page, and then say we want the first page, and for per page, I want 4 per page. So let's send. Now, as you can see, the API response becomes page results. It's a list, and it has the first 4 created user, and then we also have a total, which is 8, because we have total of 8 users in the database. Now that's what we want, right? That's pretty good. That's how you do paginations, all right? And to expand on this, I also want to include a search function. So say I want to search user by their username or email, okay? So I can have a search query. So search equals to request.args.get search, and the type should be a string. All right. Now, in order to do this, all right, I need to see if we have the search value. So if not search, so if search query is null, all right, we're just gonna do the pagination alone. But if we have something in the search query, what we want to do is we want to be searching. Also do db dot paginate. Okay, so db dot select user, and then to filter by username or email. Okay, let's do it this way. So filter, we need to use the OR function from the SQL Alchemy. So from, we need to import it first of all. SQL Alchemy import OR. All right, and then down here, so filter, we need to do OR, and then user dot username dot I like, which is a pattern matching to match our search query. So inside of this, we have a f string. So search. All right, and this is to compare username against the search query, and we also wanted to compare against our email. So user.email dot I like, also in an F string, search. All right, and we also need the order by clause. So, all right, order by user dot created at, and then we set the page per page equals per page. All right. So that's how you do search. So basically, this is like the where clause, where username I like search, or email I like search query. All right. So let's save and then go to our client and let's add a new parameter. So which is called search. And this time I want to search for, so if I search for, say 3, and then it should be only giving me the test user 3. So let's try this out. So send. So now we only have one results in the search results, which is test user 3, and the total is 1 because we only have one user matching the search criteria. All right, so that's how you do paginations and search filters in a GET request. And let's move on to put request and delete request. So, so let's do update user first. So app.route user, and then this time the route gonna be including a variable. So let's call it. So when you define routes with variables, you use angle brackets to surround them. So, and then methods equals to put. All right. Let's do modify user. And then for this route, it's going to take a variable. It's user ID. All right. So in order to update that, we first need to get the corresponding user using this user ID that the route's defined. So we say current user is db dot session dot execute. So db dot select user, and then filter by ID equals user ID dot scalar 1. All right, sorry, should be like this, scalar 1. So this is how you get the current user using the passed in user ID parameter, and then we can update that using the request body. So new user info, which is the updated new user info, equals request.json. Remember, this is how we get the request body from the request. So current user dot username equals new user info username, and current user dot email equals new user info email. So we can only update username and email because ID and the timestamps are automatically generated by the database. So now we set the current user to the new user info. We can do db.session.commit. All right, so that's how you basically make the database to save the new results, and then we can have results is the new user info. So ID is current user dot ID, and then username is current user dot username, and then email, and then created at is also current user dot created at, and then updated at should be current user dot updated at. So remember that we defining models, we make updated at to update itself when the record updates. So when we call this put request, the updated at should be changed at the same time. So let's just return results. Now let's try to modify one of the users. So let's send a put request, and then we change the routes to user / one of the user ID. Let's say I want to change user 8. All right, I want to change user 8 to user 9. So test user 9 and test user 9 at test.com. So let's send. All right, so now as you can see from the right hand side, the response is email change to test user 9 and username change to test user 9, and also the updated at to become the current timestamp, which is 14:43 GMT. All right, so that's the update routes. And to delete user, which is our last endpoints, we're gonna be expanding on the same routes because basically they're the same, because user and user ID, I want to delete that user, right? We passed in the user ID, that means we want to delete it. So we can just expand the method list to include a delete method. And then, so for current user, we also want that for delete request. And under that, so let's do a comparison. So if request.method equals to put, and then we do all of the following, all right? And then elif request.method equals to delete, and we want to delete the user and commit the results. So db.session.delete current user, and then db.session.commit. All right, so we need to return. For this, I'm just going to return a message saying that the delete operation is successful. So delete success. All right, now let's go back to the client and test the delete request. So I want to delete, say I want to delete 6. All right, and let's send. So it says delete success. Now let's verify that by trying to get the users. Let's send a get request for all the users, and we hit send. So as you can see, the ID 6 user test user 6 has been deleted, and total becomes 7 now. So so that's everything that I want to show in this tutorial. So we completed the post request to create a user, and we have a get request to get user. We also do pagination and search filters, and we also can do update user and delete user. So that's a very basic introduction to how to use Flask to write API endpoints. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.